We begin in Newfoundland. Police are investigating a suspicious death on a residential street in St. John's. Heavy police activity is still underway on the street in the west end of the city. And that's where we find CBC's Heather Gillis, who joins us from there now, who's been tracking the story all morning. Heather, what are you hearing from the police?
Well, Natasha, right now we are hearing that they are investigating a suspicious death, like you said. They arrived here on the scene at 4 o'clock this morning. When police arrived here on Craig Miller Avenue in St. John's, they found a deceased man in the roadway. They're now working with the medical examiner to determine the cause of that person's death. Patrol and forensics are here now. They have a drone in the sky to collect more evidence because they say the situation is still active. Residents in the area, while they have been told to stay inside, we've seen some of them stick their heads out the window or their doors, and they mentioned that there was a commotion this morning. Some did hear gunshots. There's also a red SUV behind us on the roadway. You can see that the driver's side door is open and that SUV remains on the road. Police have been focusing some attention on that as well. So just before 5 o'clock this morning, police sent a tweet telling residents in this area to shelter in place and to stay inside. Police, when we arrived, had guns pointing at the house. Armed tactical officers also arrived. They entered a property here on Craig Miller Avenue. About 10-15 minutes later, they, along with the K-9 unit, came back out and walked across the street. A heavy police presence in this area. Police also knocking on doors in the area, asking residents what they may have seen or heard in the early morning hours.
Now, Heather, we know that people in the area have been told to stay inside, but you mentioned some have been trying to see what's happening. They're peeking their heads out of the doors and windows. How are people reacting?
Well, we've seen some neighbors, like you said, come out and speak to one another, generally shocked any time something like this happens in the city of St. John's here in Newfoundland and Labrador. But a lot of them talking about hearing a commotion and just generally just checking on one another.
Okay, thank you, Heather. CBC's Heather Gillis in St. John's.